Welcome to Maranello, Italy, and the home of Ferrari. Today, I'm getting behind the wheel for the first time in a future Shmeemobile, the Ferrari SF90 XX, the Versione Speciale limited series version of the V8 hybrid supercar. Yes, that means I bought one without ever even driving it, and now we'll find out together whether I'm happy with my choice. We're heading up to the hills to see what this is really like, top down in the XX Spider, although mine will be the Stradale, the coupe. More on that, the timeline of the Shmeemobile, my specs, and how the allocations work to be explained later. Hi guys, I'm Shmee, hello, and welcome back to the channel. It's time to chop in the keys from my Roma Spider to go for a first drive in the SF90 XX. Listen, I know what you're thinking. Who on earth buys a car as valuable as this, having never driven one before? And if you're not familiar with how this works, generally with a new, especially limited edition car from a brand like Ferrari, they're all spoken for before the public has even ever seen them. So today we have come back, made the journey with the newest Ferrari that I've acquired, my Roma Spider. It's got about 3,000 kilometers on the clock, nearly 2,000 miles. We've driven all the way from the Museum down here to Italy to bring it back to where it was born. But today, to leave it parked up, because this is what we need to talk about. Let's first have an introduction to the XX, then go get it out onto some lovely roads to go and see whether I've made the right choice. The first thing to say, as an 812 GTS goes past, is that these are two completely different V8 powered Ferrari convertibles. It's amazing how the spectrum of offerings from Ferrari has expanded. There's actually something about the spec I'm over the moon about to do with driving this car, which we'll get to in a moment. But very shortly, we will get the roof down on the one of 599 SF90 XX Spider. Now mine will be the one of 799 XX Stradale, and it's interesting how those different allocations work. Oh, lovely. It's just an endless stream of Ferrari cars. But this takes the already pretty bonkers SF90, one of which I've owned now for nearly 3 years, since I picked it up out here in Maranello, drove it all across Europe, and have done nearly 10,000 miles, over 15,000 kilometers with it along the way. But this is the VS, the Versione Speciale, as Ferrari always introduced them by, the limited series special edition. Think of it like the Pista, the Speciale, some of these legendary and fantastic cars. Although in this case, using the XX name. It's been a big talking point, and we'll get to that a little bit later on. It's the return of a fixed rear wing on a production specification Ferrari since the F50 many decades before, because downforce has increased over 500 kilos. Power from the hybrid system, the 3 electric motors and the 4-litre twin turbocharged V8 goes up to 1,030. It's absolutely bonkers when you think of these specifications. All sorts of trick, aero and clever things going on that we'll talk about while we're out driving it today. But when I mention about the specification, let me come and show you inside, because in here it has this new bucket seat that they've just introduced. This is a seat that actually does have adjustment in it. It's not a fixed bucket, carbon of course, and the way it's finished, just absolutely stunning seat, but in traditional stripped out Ferrari special edition fashion, completely opened up interior, carbon fiber, different materials, the XX badging. So I think I should step in, we should get this started, we should take it on out and go have a drive. Swing in here then, familiar but new. Wake things up, there's a lot of new technology to learn and to play with. I'm gonna do a cold start though, so performance mode, then foot on the brake, press the magic button. It sounds good, doesn't it? That sharp, thunderous start of the 8-cylinder engine. Right, let's get out of here and go learn about this car. I'm not gonna lie, driving out a Ferrari in a brand new Ferrari is a pretty exciting experience, but I think it would be wrong not to put the roof down. In the Spider version, you can do this up to 45 kilometers an hour. It's around 30 miles per hour, just under. And of course, it will then transform you to an open top driving experience. And who does not love that kind of thing? We will discuss the whole XX philosophy and an open car, because I think that's an interesting topic of discussion. For now, let's get out of Maranello, let's head past the factory, and let's get on our way to some roads to really enjoy this thing. I know that at this point, I haven't yet revealed the spec that I've chosen for mine, but it's quite exciting to think that out of the factory entrance right here, my car is actually soon to be taken for its first road test, and the photographer guys here are going to be the first to see it, hopefully in the not too distant future, but more on that a little bit later on. For now, let's make our way out of Maranello. first impressions, and the best way to show you this is to put the e-Manettino into qualifying mode, put the regular Manettino into race, pop it into manual, and to start dropping down some gears, because this thing is utterly balmy. It is absolutely ridiculous. Second gear, it has this new sound, this new character, this new feeling to it. The idea is the XX philosophy for the first time in a car built in the normal production facility in Maranello. The previous XX cars, the FXX based on the Enzo, the 599 XX as the name suggests, and the FXXK, which was Ferrari based, have all been track only development test prototypes, you could say. The idea here was to bring some of that mindset into a car that is still very much a road car. It's still comfortable, it still rides the bumps, and a road like this has a ton of undulations and all sorts of crazy things going on. But I tell you what, compared to the regular SF90, which, like I said, by any reckoning is a pretty extreme machine, the biggest change and the first thing you notice is the new gearbox logic. I was expecting this, and it's the sound and character of it. Not only the way that it shifts, but the way that you get a sound, this almost squirt from it, which reminds me of the 430 Scuderia. And in some ways, the Dodici Cilindri did a touch of that as well, and it feels like a character, an excitement. Every shift is just this noise. More of a pop, a snap out of it as well, especially there, that sound at the back. It is brutally fast, as you can imagine. And of course, in the same car, you can then go the other way, and like the SF90, go into hybrid mode, automatic, and once it's decided it's happy to, it will drop back into E-drive, or you can just press E, and it will go directly in silent running, 25 kilometers, about 15-16 miles of full electric range. Now, it's more about the electric for additional performance, and this thing is ballistically fast. Like I said, it's up to 1,030 horsepower, it's 1,019 brake horsepower, a touch more electric, a touch more from the ICE, the combustion engine as well, versus the predecessor, the standard model. But where it really excels is that it's still a brilliant thing to drive on the road. The suspension is compliant. A couple of things that I don't particularly like. Number one, it's really low. That carbon splitter is so low to the ground. We've got the lift system in here. You would be nuts if you didn't order that. And also, this is a kind of odd usability one, but given we've got the carbon fiber door cards, it does away with any armrest. So you can either put your arm up here, or you just keep your arm in position and go with the flow. But I don't know why I'm sitting here driving like this. We need to turn it up a bit into performance, start dropping the gears again, go have some fun, continue on our way towards the twisties ahead. I tell you what, driving in this region in a bright red Ferrari supercar, it's a pretty cool experience, but there are plenty more things to talk about, and one of those is how different the design of the XX is to the base car. It's such a radical departure. I mean, at the rear, you've got the fixed wing, you've got this full width tail light bar as opposed to the quad lamps that you had previously. A completely different look with the diffuser and everything down below. Of course, the engine is back here, and to open that and have a look, the lever is down here in the driver's door well. And this is where, as per the SF90, come and take a look at how low that power plant sits in the engine bay. The 4-litre twin turbocharged V8, slightly more power as I mentioned, new pistons, new machine combustion chamber, whole host of software updates, and of course you can pull the strut down here to position that in place if you wish. I just find it remarkable looking how far down it is in the engine bay. Back here, this is kind of a familiar layout. Up front though, things are very different. The design, but also the space, or lack of space. You've got the ducts that go in through the front and up over the top to help with the downforce. Again, completely new look front end. Same headlamp units, but the way it's designed is basically like it's a different car, and I find that really quite cool. But come and have a look at where previously you had space for a backpack, a briefcase, something like that, and in the XX, when we open up the front, that's what you're greeted by. The RACE system, your front electric motors, but gone is your little storage cubby here, and in its place you've got fans, electrics, airflow. It makes sense from a performance perspective also, full carbon bonnet. And actually, interestingly, the personalization specifications plaque on this car is obviously here, as opposed to in a luggage storage area, because you don't really have one. So it's Rosso Corsa, obviously the traditional bright Ferrari red paintwork, and it looks amazing. I tell you what, this is a car that I think suits Rosso Corsa better than pretty much any other. Spec options on here, the carbon fiber wheels. Carbon wheels make me live in fear, because if something happens, it's expensive. So you can probably guess that I won't be having those. Painted shields on the side look really nice. I prefer them on the big V12 cars because they actually change the position. If you have the regular traditional shield, it's here on the front wing, which is a little bit more visible, whereas this kind of hides beneath the door mirror. So different specs, obviously different options. And we've got the contrast Nero roof on the Spider that we've got here as well. But from where we are right now, up in this direction is a nice, very twisty road into the sunshine. Let's get back in and let's go. The first time that I drove the regular SF90 was on a very similar road to this, the tight, twisty mountain passes near to Maranello, and I was absolutely blown away by its performance. Just something more akin to a space rocket, so fast that when you arrive at the next corner, you have to actually question how quickly you're going. For the XX, they've improved the front brakes, small tweaks, still carbon ceramics of course, as per all Ferrari models. But even at the moment in race mode, without even bumpy road chosen, it is still road car first and foremost. And I think that's the thing with Ferrari, because they have so many options in their arsenal, the challenge cars, GT3, GTE, even all the way up to the 499p Modificata, if you're that way inclined. They can get away with offering cars that are more at home as road cars, and that whip that you get on every shift is just a delight to the ears. Of course, regulations make these things harder and harder every successive model that arrives, but to still have so much character from it is what's really quite incredible. And I particularly enjoyed driving the SF90, and this is just a step on. In fact, even the feel at the front end, the SF90, of course, you're aware of those front motors, there's a little bit more weight up there, it does detract slightly from the experience versus the 296 GTB and GTS, for example. But in here, it's super connected. It just snaps through the gears. Oh, this is heavenly. Roof down, sun out, these kinds of roads in the XX. And I can completely see what they're going for with it and why it's a mindset thing. If you think of it as, you know, the full race car XX models that we've known from the past, then yes, it's not that. It's nothing like that extreme, that hardcore. It's a marketing thing, let's say. But if you consider it like the Pista to the 488 GTB, that's where it slots in. This is just awesome. Slight difference in performance here. We've also got the new boost control logic, but that's only relevant when you're in qualifying mode, which on the road like this, you don't really need. You can't use 1030 horsepower. You have slightly less in performance mode because it's not giving you the full power. It uses this very clever different setup depending on which mode you're in, basically. If we do go into performance, just to do it and experience some of the difference there. Oh, this thing is so quick. Those downshifts, what a day. Let's talk for a moment about coupe versus Spider. This is of course a big question, but there are two quite different parts to the answer. The first is about which would you like? Would you like a fixed coupe, or would you like a car with a folding or retractable hardtop? The second is which can you actually have, because that's kind of how it works with the system. I'll explain in a second. So when it comes to my usage, I used to absolutely love convertibles. I have a few convertibles in the collection, the Roma Spider, the 296 GTS, my McLaren 675 LT Spider, which in some ways feels like, I'm going to say the equivalent of this a decade earlier. It's that type of positioning, new technology, feel, hardcore version of its respective car. But generally speaking, I prefer a coupe these days, especially when it's for driving in anger on a racetrack, something like the Ford GT, the Senna, the Zenvo, the STO, these types of cars. And one thing when it comes to this, given you have absolutely no luggage space up front whatsoever, the fact that you do in the coupe get a small shelf behind you, it's a small shelf, I'm going to add, but it is something. And something slightly beats nothing in terms of actually using it. You know, I'd be the guy who tries to do an overnight trip somewhere in a car with no luggage space, which if you're taking 2 people in the car, is not necessarily the best thing in the world. The other topic of discussion is the way that it works within Ferrari, because traditionally the Apertas, the Spiders, have been the rarer, less common models. The 458 Speciale, they made a couple of thousand of those, and they made 499 Apertas. The Pista Spider, again, they made a few thousand, no exact number. Pilottis were coupes, but arguably rarer, of course, given you could only get one if you were racing in the Challenge or a different Ferrari race series. Whereas the Spiders, they made significantly fewer than the coupes. It's the same with this. 799 Stradales, 599 Spiders. Interestingly, Spider, not Aperta. Aperta has recently been used for the limited edition open-top cars. La Ferrari Aperta, 458 Speciale A, SA Aperta. You get the kind of feeling when there's a number involved. In the case of the SF90 XX, the way that it works is that effectively if you're a, as they call it, VIP customer, you're invited to purchase a Stradale. If you are what they call a top TOP customer, then you're invited to purchase the convertible, the SF90 XX Spider. Those are generally your customers who also purchase the Icona series cars, the hypercars, have a very big fleet of Ferraris in their garage. So I'm incredibly lucky to have reached what they call the VIP status. I mean, I currently own, at this moment in time, 4 Ferraris, and of course have the XX coming, the Dodici Cilindri coming, and who knows what comes beyond that. So it's kind of lucky for me that my choice would be the Stradale. You know, when it came to the ordering process for Dodici Cilindri, I was invited to choose whichever I would go for of them, the coupe or the convertible. I've gone for the coupe similarly because I want to take it on big trips and take lots of luggage for a couple of weeks with me. So that kind of matters a little bit more, and you need to have that usability of it. I think there are different cars for slightly different purposes. Do you know what? Every time you downshift in here, it amazes me how different the character of the gearbox is. This has been really reworked. And the last time I had that kind of feeling was driving the LT for the first time against the comparative with the 650S, and how much a gearbox can change things. I always loved in the SF90 how even though it's 1,000 horsepower, you could have fun mid-range. You didn't need to be going back 10. And this does it even more. Of course, it's even more fun when you are going back 10, but you don't need to. You can also just pop it into the full, like, soften it down modes, right? Let it go electric, and it just goes about its way. And I do particularly enjoy the fact that I can actually commute from home to my garage and back in full electric. It's just a fun thing to do, especially if I'm driving very late at night, not disturbing the neighbours, etc. Of course, it's not what it's, I want to say, primarily about. It introduces new challenges with the electric system and with the need to always have it plugged in. I mean, you should always plug these cars into a CTEC smart charger anyway, but even more so when it's a hybrid powertrain. The thing I will say is that it actually kicks into action really nicely. Foot on the throttle, straight away, boom, go. Whereas the 296 is a little bit more lethargic. This is like, here we go, ready, meaning business now, let's go, let's have some fun. So we should probably make our way back towards Maranello, back towards base, because my time driving this is coming towards an end. Every single time coming over this bridge into Maranello, seeing the Cavallino Rampante in the middle of the roundabout ahead is quite a good feeling. It's quite exciting, even more so when you've been at the wheel of the SF90 XX for an hour or two. Now, we have seen something pretty exciting along the way, as you can probably imagine, with the Tesla loops around here, but I want to give a few final thoughts, because one thing to discuss is the price point. A spec SF90 XX Stradale is an uplift of around 75% from where the SF90 Stradale arrived 5 or 6 years ago now, and that's not only due to obviously an increase in the price of the car, but in that time seeing 30% plus inflation globally, to be completely honest. So combine those together and you do end up with a car that the entry price in the UK alone is about £300,000 more. So it's a big step up. Of course, for that, you get a car that is so unbelievably fun to drive. Yes, there are some funny quirks, like the armrest, obviously, that I've mentioned. This car has a leather steering wheel.
we'll talk more about specs to come, but as you can imagine, I might be doing something different with that as well. Carbon wheels and these kinds of things, lots to touch on. But overall, as the drive goes, I'm amazed by how much more car it actually is visually, in terms of the software, the feel, the excitement, the refinement really. Like the 812 Competizione, it feels like a more vanilla car than you might expect, certainly in comparison with some other manufacturers. That's the lift, by the way, to get over a bump like that. But at the end of the day, that's what I said earlier, right? Ferrari have all of these different race cars. If you want to race, you can buy one of those. I love the steering, the fact that you basically never need to take your hands off, even for some of the hairpins. It's just a 180 and off you go. It feels super familiar, obviously for me, having done so many miles in the regular Stradale. But all things considered, what an amazing drive. What a thing. I'm over the moon. I cannot wait. Super excited. Now that we're back, parked up beneath the gates at the Ferrari factory, there are a few more things I'd like to show you inside that have changed from the previous car as well. Of course, swathes of Alcantara and carbon fibre, these carbon door cards as I mentioned, the new seats, which having seated in these now for an extended period, are really good. We've got the carbon fibre for the backrest back here, the limited series plaque as well, that you can personalise, the dedication plate. We've got a few other changes that are new to the XX. This painted panel here, you can have that to match the exterior or to match your accent colour for the exterior if you've opted for the accent on the aerodynamic parts. Of course, the steering wheel, we know from the other models with the touch controls, you wake it up on the right hand side and then you have your cruise control, your ADAS systems, your e-Manettino here with the different driving modes, or go electric, and then your traditional Manettino over on the other side. If you're in qualifying mode, oh, that sounded good. That was a sharp startup. You get this new display here, which is the boost control logic over on the right side, that yellow bar. You get a few series of boosts effectively for a little bit more power delivery. Of course, you have the XX badging in the very center, but most of the controls are largely similar. The H-pad here, reminiscent of the old gated manuals, has been repositioned slightly forward, so it's slightly easier to reach to. This is all quite open, so don't put something in your cup holder because it's going to fall straight through to these floors, which are now completely solid, no carpets down there. I like that feel. It reminds me of the old Speciale, that kind of thing, just winding back a little bit. I don't think we've got a glove box anymore, so you'll keep your documents somewhere else, but these seats are super light as a result, really, really comfortable, very, very nice. And of course the roof is just 14 seconds with a press of the button right here. All in all, this has been quite the thing to drive. I like how even these three bars match the louvers on the exterior, your door release, and then your front storage, your fuel filler, and your electric cap as well, and the door pouches, and of course this is to open up the engine bay behind us. But otherwise, fairly familiar feeling. Left-hand drive or right-hand drive for these. Mine will of course be right, being a UK allocation, but inside you get surprisingly little wind buffeting. I have to say this does a much better job than the convertible V12 cars, even including the Daytona SP3, which is very nice for that driving experience. So this is quite a sharp, exciting sound, but off we go for now. Let's hop out. It goes without saying, I'm pretty excited about the imminent arrival of mine, but we need to talk about the spec for a moment, because when I came here to Maranello and went to the atelier to introduce that the SF90 XX was going to be joining the collection, we took a look at a couple of different spec ideas, I think 5 different options at the time, and it's evolved since then. Now, when you've got the full options list, there are a lot of different things you can choose. For example, you can have fixed suspension, that means you get no lift system. You can have Lexan windows, so no fully adjustable glass. You can have the 4-point racing harnesses, if you prefer those to the 3-point seat belts. Now, I will definitely go for these carbon fiber racing bucket seats because those are particularly good. The thing with all of those other options is that as much as I love the idea of it, this is a road car at the end of the day, and they're all things that, while if you're collecting the car look amazing in the garage, they kind of hinder the usability. And I want to do miles. I need a lift system. I need 3-point harnesses. I need normal windows so that you can actually drive the thing. Also, the carbon wheels, as I mentioned, I live in fear of carbon fiber wheels. They look amazing, and the unsprung mass is obviously brilliant in terms of the dynamics. But if you lend the car to someone else and something happens, it can get very expensive very, very quickly. So
I'm going to be ordering the car in a more usable specification. But it's not going to be boring, mark my words, because when it comes to the details, mine is an atelier allocation. So if you have a tailor-made car, that's when you can have a full, completely bespoke specification in terms of materials, make your own colors, all of that. Atelier is where you can go a little bit further than the regular menu from the dealer, should we say. So you can have some bespoke paints, you can come up with unique inscriptions and different detailing. So I'm not going for the standard racing stripes. It will be a dual tone. It will have some bespoke livery, keeping it subtle considering how bold it's going to be. It's an evolution from something I might have done in the past, but it is also kind of unique. It's going to be very special, very bright, very out there, and very worthy, I think, for a car of this nature. The whole idea behind this is that it's an extreme Ferrari, right? A big fixed wing at the back, the aero, the styling that you look around. I've mentioned this before that I always find a little peculiar how that's painted, but anyway, we won't dwell too much on that. The thing with it is that it's an extreme car. I had high expectations before today, and I'm pleased to report that I have not been disappointed. That's the important thing. I am very much looking forward to this, and in the not too distant future, I'll be able to share with you exactly what I've gone for. For now, I need to return the keys to one V8 Ferrari convertible to roll out in the other, which is kind of crazy, to continue our voyage with the Roma Spider. A big thank you to the team here at Ferrari. If you like cars like this as well, check out the video just over here also. But for now, that is all. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers!